number of people signed in for the Sage AP Automation webinar so far here. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, I'm Rick Wilson with Martin Associates. Trust everybody that's attending is healthy and adjusting to the new normal that we're all facing. But for the time being, I'm excited to have you join our presentation today on Sage AP Automation powered by Beanworks. And that's an end-to-end solution for managing your AP invoices and payments more efficiently, and it's fully integrated with your Sage systems, Sage 100 and Sage 500. So before we dive in and introduce the presenter, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. The presentation will be recorded today, and a link will be emailed to you in the next few days with some follow-up information. If you have questions, go ahead and use the chat feature in the Zoom, and we'll go ahead and wait till the end of the demo to answer the questions, and we should have plenty of time to answer them. So I guess without further delay, I'd like to introduce Joey Glazer with Beanworks. Joey, go ahead and take it away.
Great, thank you so much for the introduction, Rick, and I'm so glad to be here today. So today's webinar, again presented by Sage AP Automation, we're going to be talking about how AP Automation is transforming the back office. So we'll jump right into it. As Rick said, my name is Joey. I'm a sales manager here at Beanworks and Sage AP Automation. My role here is mainly to help clients discover the wonders of AP Automation and doing things like webinars like this, as well as one-on-one product meetings. So we'll start first with an agenda of what we're going to be covering today. So in today's webinar, we're going to be going over the current status of a lot of AP right now, which is manual AP and what that looks like. We're going to be looking through some of the research provided by a level research study, the benefits of AP automation, and then we'll give you a quick walkthrough of the software of AP automation. And then finally, at the end, we'll have some time for a Q&A session, a question and answer period. And as Rick said, if you do think of some questions, please leave them in the chat and we'll be sure to get to all of them or as many as we can. All right, so first of all, from our experience talking to finance professionals, we typically see that their core problems related to AP are speed, tracking, and finally, the amount of time they're spent managing their AP. So these are the 4 basic questions that you can ask yourself to determine how manual your AP actually is. So what % of your week is spent on data entry? What % of your week is spent following up on approvals? What % of your week is spent managing payments? And also what % is spent doing things like manual tasks like scanning and filing paper? The reason we focus on the time spent in each part of the process is because through hundreds of customer interviews, we've actually identified that this is the root cause of a lot of other challenges in AP. So if you think about it, if you spend less time coding, your invoices can be approved faster. If it took less time to manage approvals, they'd be in your accounting system quicker. And if they're digitized and available in your accounting system quicker, the organization would be faster and have quicker access to documents, and you wouldn't need to spend all that time tracking them down. So last year, in 2019, we partnered with a company called Level Research, and they did an in-depth study on AP processes from all different organization sizes and all different industries. So what did they find? Well, they found that most large enterprises have some sort of AP automation or some sort of, I guess, tool to automate their AP systems, whereas small to medium-sized enterprises, so SMEs or companies with less than $100 million in revenue, still have a very manual workflow. So why might this be the case? Well, historically, these tools have only been available for the large enterprises because there was more need of automation for organizations processing such huge volumes of invoices. The lack of tools available for SMEs left them with limited options. They're often patching different tools together, combined with paper, filing cabinets, and manual follow-up. So, for example, some of the smaller enterprises are finding one tool to automate their payments and choosing a different tool to help capture their data. Um, so they're often piecing things together, which still led to a lot of manual process. So if we dive into some of the results from that research study, we can see here that small and medium-sized enterprises that have manual AP processes typically experience challenges around manual data entry and routing, as well as high rates of lost invoices. Manual AP processes are typically high cost and they inhibit growth. Organizations that have these manual processes tend to be inefficient and leak costs. They're dependent on current systems that are not scalable to higher invoice volumes or the needs of growing organizations. We know over the long run, a lot of us are trying to grow, trying to expand our businesses. It's important that we have a tool that helps us scale as the business does as well. So where does AP automation come in? So there's many different ways you could use, or an AP professional could solve these challenges. So here's a few different categories of software that tackle those problems. They include document management, data entry, and AP automation. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to focus mainly on making a case for why AP automation will be able to help you and your business. So AP automation will eliminate repetitive tasks. That means no more scanning, printing, and emailing invoices, as this is going to be automated instead. Real-time financial data. This is where you can see your data in real time. For example, if you're managing invoices with paper, you might not be able to see where they are in the process. This will change that by having that electronic. And procure to pay. You're going to want a system here that helps you manage your invoices, your purchase orders, all the way through to payments in one system. We don't need to have to use 10 different systems to manage your invoices. And with AP automation, you get unlimited users. So that means as many people as you want can use the system. All your data is in one place, and that includes for multiple entities. With it being a software as a service cloud solution, you can access it securely from anywhere. And I know a lot of us in different industries are having to work from home, or maybe even forced to work from home in some cases. So it is important to have access to that data for AP in order for you to work remotely. Now you can have a complete AP system that frees you up to make real-time decisions and do what you want and need to focus on in your role. So a lot of people didn't go to school to do data entry. So freeing up that time gives you time to focus on really more higher value and priority tasks. So once an organization adopts Sage AP automation, we've actually found that they typically see an 83% reduction in data entry. So we surveyed, I guess, over 300 of our clients before they joined on with us, and then after. So this is where a lot of our data can come from. They also see typically a 95% reduction in the time spent managing approvals. That's typically a very manual process where you're sending an invoice out, either a paper copy or sending an email, and then waiting and waiting and hoping that they approve that invoice in a timely manner, or else you're hounding them down to get that invoice approved. So if we go back into the research from Level Research, they found that automated teams had significant reduction in paper invoices, approval times, and the visibility of unpaid invoices. So we've got reduction of paper invoice volumes here at the top, quicker approvals, and visibility. Those are the main improvements that clients saw who used AP automation. And this is overall in the industry. Some of these other ones towards the bottom are quite important as well, like lower cost overall. That's definitely important to our bottom line, especially in today's market, as well as increased employee productivity, reduction of payment penalties, as well as early payment discounts. That's often a benefit that's overlooked, but some clients also can take advantage of those early payment discounts and avoid paying late fees. So we believe here at Sage AP Automation that accountants should be freed from monotonous tasks. So no one, as I mentioned, went to school to do data entry all day. And so that's why we have and built Sage AP Automation. It was created by our CEO. She is an accountant herself. And so don't just take our word for it. Next, we're actually going to jump into the demonstration to show you what this can look like for our clients. So I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough. Keep your questions in mind. And again, at the end, we'll be able to go through a question and answer session to go over any questions you have about AP, the status of AP, and how AP automation can work for you. So let's jump directly into the software here. The first screen I've got open in front of us here is our dashboard. So this is a screen here that gives us user-based metrics of everyone within the system. So we can see how long it's taking them to do various tasks, such as processing an invoice or approving an invoice. And that's useful to help us identify bottlenecks. So in this case here, we've got one of our users, Tom Green. He is spending on average 139 days to approve an invoice. And luckily, he's just a made-up character here. But let's also hope there's no Tom Greens within your organization that take that long. But it does identify us of the bottleneck, so we can have a conversation with that user to improve upon that. It does also alert us of these problems, I guess before they even become problems. So before a vendor even calls us to complain about an invoice that hasn't been paid yet, we're going to be able to manage where those bottlenecks are in order to keep our employees accountable and reduce that overall processing, approval, and payment time. So next, I'll give you a brief overview of the system structure and user-based permissions before we get into each of the modules in more detail. So if you look on this left side sidebar here, we can see we've got three main modules. We have purchase orders, we have invoices, and we have payments. We'll go over each of those with you today. Invoices is really the bread and butter, and then some of our clients use purchase orders if it's applicable to your workflow, and most of our clients use payments as well, just to have that all-in-one solution, one place to manage their POs, invoices, and payments. The great thing about these modules is they're all designed in a very similar way. So here within invoices, invoices will flow from left to right through these tabs at the top. They will move from create to in progress to approvals to export and then to archived in that order. And that works very similar throughout each of the modules. For example, if we jump down to payments, we can see that that works in almost a very similar way, but in blue color. So the goal is to make it easy and user-friendly for your organizations to pick up and learn the system and for users to be comfortable. In the center of each screen will be the workspace. So in this case here, it's all the invoices that we have that are in progress. And on the left-hand side, we have filters at the top. So we can filter by anything we want. We can filter by the status of the invoice. And below that, we can sort by organization structure. So this is where we can customize this structure to whatever fits your organization best. So for example, if you had multiple legal entities or multiple companies that you manage, you can have those all connected. If you had different divisions or different locations or even different departments, we can build that out as well. So the purpose for that is going to be to restrict access to this by user. For example, if you had one user who works, let's say, just within Green Bean Co., within one of our companies, and within the marketing department, we can give that user access so when they log on, They will only see what's in that specific department and that specific entity. They won't see anything else. Whereas from your perspective, if you are a controller, if you are in the AP team, or even from management, you may want to see everything. So you can select all here to view all the AP from the entire organization on one screen. Or you can just select, for example, the locations, entities, or departments that you want to see just by clicking into these bubbles like this. And as I mentioned earlier, we do allow unlimited users, so you can give everyone access to this. You don't have to worry about who has access to Sage. Everyone can have access to Sage AP automation. So next, we'll get into each of these modules in a little bit more detail, starting with purchase orders. And I'll note as well, purchase orders can work in one of a couple different ways. We can create purchase orders directly within our system here. So directly within Sage AP Automation, we can create POs, and we can match them up against invoices to do what we call a two-way match, so the PO and the invoice. Although if you are using Sage 100, we do have another feature where we can actually import POs that are created within Sage 100. And that allows us to have those imported directly, so they don't need to be created in here. And then we can match up that purchase order with an invoice, as well as with a receipt of goods or a packing slip to do the three-way match. So a couple different ways that can function. For the purpose of today's demonstration, I'll show you a brief overview of how POs can be created here within Sage AP Automation, as that will be available for all users. So to start, the user who is creating a purchase order, they will be able to select which company it's related to. They can search for their vendor from the dropdown, and this will pull in your list of vendors directly in from Sage. So they can select one and then select things like a delivery date, description. I'll just type in cleaning services, it's a cleaning vendor. And then they can fill out the line items of what is contained on that purchase order. And so this will pull in the list of accounts directly in from Sage. So they can type in the account directly if they knew it, or even if they didn't know it, they could type in any word from the name. I'll search the word cleaning to find the cleaning expense account here. And then they can fill out the rest of the line items. These columns here are going to be customized to what you have set up within Sage. So any standard list you have, if it's going to be kind of an items list, a class list, any other standard list that you use, we can pull those in here. And even if the purchase order creator is not going to be the one to code it here, that can also be done at the approval stage. So a couple different ways that the workflow can work. The creator can then click Save or directly submit for approval. And if they click Save, that'll move it on to the In Progress tab here. So if we open one of these here, let's open this one. Our system will create a visualization of that purchase order like this. So we'll assign a PO number, a date, a vendor name, address, and the line items will be visualized like this. If that's all, purchase order is all good to go, they can just click Submit for approval, and that moves on to the approval step. Or they can make any changes before submitting it. For example, adding more line items, or even changing the line so you can split the line by percentage or by equal parts. And they can also add backup documentation. So for example, if you had a quote from a vendor or a letter or a contract to attach, you can just attach that here, and that will live underneath the purchase order under backup pages. Once that purchase order is submitted for approval, we can run approvals on that, and I'll show you in a bit later on in today's demo how we can set up those approval channels. the purchase order approver, they'd get an email and they'd be able to log on here and they can select all the POs at once and then approve or reject, or they can open each one in greater detail. They can review an image of the PO, review the coding, and then click approve or reject. And if they do click reject, they're required to leave a comment of why that got rejected. Otherwise, they can click approve to move it on to the next step or to the next approver. And once those POs are fully approved, they move into this tab here called the committed tab. This is where all these open POs will live. So everything here will be stored for you automatically as these POs are open. So invoices will be awaiting to get matched up against these POs here. So we can review what we have open, what we have outstanding, and the amount remaining on each PO. We can also click into it to view. And then once those purchase orders are closed, they move into the Close tab, which acts as our historical database of all the POs that have gone through the system. So this is where everything will be stored for at least 7 years. So again, you can open these up to view them, or you can also run reports. And I'll show you a bit more about those reports later on as well. So next we'll move on to the invoice module, and I'll also be able to show you how that PO match can take place. So if you don't use purchase orders at all, you can ignore that section of POs, and we'll just focus right now on the invoice module, as this is where your workflow will begin. Otherwise, for everyone, this is where the invoices will come into the system. So we can receive invoices in one of a couple different ways. First method is by email. So if you receive invoices by email already, what we can do is we can provide you with an email address to receive those into. But if you already have an email address set up, it's typically easier just to set that email to forward or to auto forward those invoices into the system. So those emailed invoices will come directly into in progress. The first tab here, the create tab, this is typically for those invoices you have, let's say, that come in the mail, or you have a stack of them on your desk. Those can be scanned in all at once, whether it's 50 invoices or 200 or even just one. Doesn't matter how many, you can scan them in all together. Drag and drop the file into here and then click upload. So that will bring in all those invoices together like this. But if they are each individual invoices, we can just click the auto split button to move them onto separate lines, indicating separate invoices. Then if we do have some multi-page invoices, we can drag and drop as needed. And then we'll click save and create invoices to get those ones into the system. So no need to spend time in front of a scanner scanning those in individually or using a PDF splitter. You can do that all in here to really save you and your team time on some of those manual tasks. In addition, as we were talking about remote work as well, we want to make sure you can get those invoices into the system, even if you're not in the office. So we also have a mobile app. So that means your users can just snap a photo directly with the app in order to get an invoice uploaded that way. So next is the In Progress tab. This is where invoices will come in, whether they're scanned in, emailed in, or we snapped a photo with the app. They will all come in here by next business day. So it's an overnight process. We'll be able to capture a lot of that data for you. So you'll be able to see an image of the invoice and the PO if there is one. And we can capture for you things like the vendor name, the invoice number, the PO number if there is one, the dates, the due dates, the subtotals, totals, and taxes from the invoice. So that's going to be the majority of that data entry work. And then the only thing that's left is typically the GL coding and line item coding. And I'll also be able to show you how we can assist with that or how AP automation can help with that in one of a couple ways, depending on if it's associated with a purchase order or not. So in the first example here, we do have a purchase order matched up with this invoice. So in order to code that, all we'll need to do is click PO adoption. That will populate this window here of what was included on that PO. So if there's multiple lines, we can just select the ones we want. There's just one here, so I'll hit the plus. And then I'll click adopt lines. And what that does is simply put that just pulls the coding directly off the purchase order onto the line items here for the invoice. So pretty much in two or three clicks there, we're able to code that invoice directly from the PO. And then we can click save or submit for approval, and that invoice is done. I'll note as well is for those of you using the receivings module within Sage, this can also link with that in order to just match up what was received. For those non-PO related invoices, well, we want to help you save time on those as well. So when you receive an invoice related to a specific vendor, and the next month you receive an invoice from the same vendor, if that's generally going to be coded the same way each month for that same vendor, all you'll need to do is click this green Smart Code button up here in the top right. So what that does is that remembers how that invoice was coded previously. So we'll just click Smart Code. That will populate the line items here for us. And if it's all going to be done the same, we'll just click Submit for approval, and that invoice is done. Or if it's going to be different, all we'll need to do, or maybe we click Smart Code and then we realize we need to change it, we can go into any of these fields here, for example, the account code, and again, we can just correct the coding, or we can type in, let's say, the word expense to find our list of expense accounts. And then we can click Save and Submit for approval. We also have the ability here to assist if you need to make any other changes. You can add line items. You can split lines by percentages or by equal parts. And again, you can attach backup pages if you do need to attach something like a letter from a vendor or a contract. Otherwise, this is the process here to get those invoices into the system and coded. So if we look back into that presentation we covered earlier, a lot of that was revolving around some of that manual task. Those manual tasks are spent doing things like data entry and coding. So this is where we can eliminate the lion's share, the vast majority of all that time is going to be on that auto capture, and then that automatic coding either from the PO or by clicking Smart Code. So let's move on now to the next tab here, which is the Approvals tab. So once those invoices are submitted for approval, the approver would get a notification. It's going to be either on the mobile app or by email that there's something to approve. So they can select all and batch approve all or reject with one click. Or they can go into each one in more detail. They can view an image of the invoice. If there was a PO, it will show up side by side as well. They can review the coding, the line items, and then click approve or reject directly. And if they do click reject, they're required to leave a comment of why it got rejected. Otherwise, clicking approve will move it on to the next step or to the next approver. And I'm sure a question a lot of you have right now is how do we configure those approvals? How do we set up who approves what? So we can do that under the what we call approval channels here. So global rules will define your entire organization, or we can have entity-specific rules. So I've got an entire list of approval channels here, so you can have as many as you like. I'll open the first one here as an example. So each of these boxes here will be a set of rules. For example, the first one we've got invoices between $5,000 and $10,000. So we can set up a dollar range. We can set it up to different departments. We can also set the approvals based on other lists that we pull in from Sage. For example, your account code list, we can select different GL codes to run the approval off of, or different vendors. So if you always want one vendor or one GL to be approved by a certain person, you can set that up. Or maybe by department, you always want that department manager to approve those invoices, you can set that up as well. So in this case here, with this set of 4 rules, we can then choose who that will go for approval. So right now that will go here just to Sally as a single approval, but we can add more people to that. So we can make that a multi-level approval. So we can have that go first to Paul and then to Sally, or maybe then to Jill, our CEO. And what we can also do is create what we call group approvals. That's if we select multiple people and put them in a group together like this, either one of them can approve. So in this case, it'll go first to Paul, then to Sally, then to either Jack or to Jill. So those are useful for if you have multiple managers who would need to approve, but maybe you just need one of their approvals, but not all of them. You can set them in an approval group like this. So that was, I think that was number 2 or 3 of the top most time-consuming tasks in AP at the moment is those approvals. So another way we can help eliminate some of that time in addition to these automated approvals going out is going to be the reminders. So you can set those reminders if you want them to be for every approval that's needed. That user can get an email each time. Or maybe there's someone who receives too many emails per day and they might prefer just to get a daily summary. That will give them a single email each day with all the invoices that they need to approve. And that will also act as an automatic reminder. If there's any invoices that are yet to be approved or that haven't been approved by the next day, they'll get that email again. The next step is called the export. So this is what sends those invoices back into Sage. So this step is quite simple. All we'll need to do here is click Actions in the top right, Export Data. What that does is that will send all this invoice data back into your Sage. So what it does, it'll create a batch for you within your AP module of Sage 100 or 500. So it'll create the batch, it'll prepare that for you. So you'll just need to go into Sage and click Post. And because your Sage is generally server-based and hosted, hosted on a server or with a third party, if that's the case, what we'll do is we'll install what we call the sync tool wherever your Sage is located. So if you have that on your server, we'll install that to communicate with our system. So that lets Sage AP Automation, which is web-based here, communicate with your server-based Sage. So that sync tool will run automatically in the background, or we can open it up and click Run if we want that sync to happen right away. Next is what we call the Archive tab, and this acts as your online filing cabinet of all the invoices that have gone through the system. So everything gets stored again in here for at least 7 years. So we can search up anything we'd like. We have these filters again on the left-hand side to filter by really any data point we want, maybe by vendor, maybe by invoice number, maybe a date range, maybe any other term such as the exported date or the amount. We can search by anything we like or any combination. We can open those invoices up directly just by clicking on them to view an image of the invoice with the PO and the data. Or what we can do is use the reporting feature. So I alluded to this earlier in purchase orders. This is available on almost every page in the system. We can run reports either as a CSV or a PDF file. We can select what we'd like to display on the report. I'll just run a PDF report here to show everyone what it looks like. So if we open up this report, the first page will give us a summary of everything that we selected. In this case, it looks like 24 invoices. So it's a bit of a long report here. We've got a number of pages. We can either scroll through it like this, or even we can just click on the hyperlink here on the summary page to bring us down to that page of the report. We'll be able to see an image of the invoice here, the header coding at the top, the line item coding below, and the approval history to show us who approved it and when. And if there was a purchase order associated with it, it will appear on the next page just like this. So going back to that level research study, it found that one of those top points was the sorting and filing and paper management. So with AP automation, we're going to help eliminate all of that sorting and filing and that paper. So everything's going to be stored automatically for you. You can run those filters as easy as we just did here. Let's say you had an invoice from 6 months ago to search for. We even have this global search at the top. So we can type in anything, let's say Amazon, hit enter, and we're immediately brought to all our invoices related to the word Amazon. Great, so we covered purchase orders, we covered invoices, as well as that purchase order match. So at this point, some of our clients choose to continue on with the payment in Sage. Although the majority of our clients do use Sage AP automation for payments, as it does create a seamless place to manage POs, invoices, and payments. And so the payment methods we offer are going to be standard check. That's where we can actually print and send a check directly to your vendor. So no need to manage that in-house or to print and sign those checks in-house. We can also make payment by ACH. So that's an electronic transfer directly to your vendor's bank account, or by virtual credit card. So the way that works is that will be a unique credit card number that's generated and emailed directly to your vendor. So they will get that email and they will process that credit card as a MasterCard transaction. The advantage for you is there's zero cost to make a virtual credit card payment. It's free. And we can provide a cashback rebate of around 1%. So there is a benefit of getting cash back and a free payment. So it's a really great payment method to consider as well. So let's run through how that workflow works here within payments. Those payments will automatically move into our Create tab here once those invoices are exported. So we can select what we'd like to pay. It will give us our age payables list of what's 30, 60, 90, and over 90 days due. We can expand some of these to notice that some of these payments are grouped together by vendor. So we can select what we'd like to pay and then click Create. That will move those payments on to the next tab. It's called our In Progress tab, so similar to the previous workflows. In here, everything is defaulted automatically, so we can just submit them all for approval. But if we go into each one, we have the option of changing, for example, the bank account that it's coming from, the payment method, as well as setting it for what we call auto release. So if we set that payment for auto release, it will automatically be released once that payment has been approved. Next is the approval stage. So similar again to the other modules, we can set up separate approvers for the payments module. So those payment approvers, they can come in to select all to approve or reject, or they can go into each one to review the details of each payment and give their approval or their rejection just by clicking, and they can leave a comment. Next is the Releases tab. So again, we can automate this tab if we like. Otherwise, we can select all the payments and click Release, and that will send those payments directly off to the vendor. And so that'll send out the checks in the mail, that'll send out the ACH or the virtual credit card to your vendors. And that will also move those payments on to the next tab, which is called Paid. And this is again where we complete that sync with Sage. So we have the export button in the top right. That will push that payment data back into Sage to mark those as paid to complete your process. And finally, the Archive tab. This is going to be your database of all those payments, so you can view them all and run reports as well. So one of the questions that comes up here within the payments module is what happens if I want to make some payments directly from Sage? And the great thing is you can, because we do have a two-way sync on payments. That means that let's say someone is walking into your office and they say, I need a check right now. You can still issue that check as you do normally within Sage. And with our two-way sync on payments, that will let our system know that's been paid from Sage and remove it from the Create tab here, so you won't be prompted to pay that twice. And so I guess we've reached the end here of the payments module. Next, we do have a time for question and answer, but before we get to that, I just wanted to review what the process looks like if you did want to get set up. So if you did want to move forward with us, the implementation process is actually quite easy and straightforward. Another great thing is it's done remotely as well. So it's typically 3 main meetings with our implementation team. The first one is where we can actually install the sync tool to communicate with your Sage software. The second meeting is to customize your workflows, so things like approval channels and POs. And then the third meeting is generally a training session for you and your team. So typically 3 main meetings to get started. They generally take place over the course around 1 to 3 weeks. So definitely in under a month, we're looking to have you fully set up and running your invoices through APA. That's typically the timeline, but 1 to 3 weeks is the most common. And that brings us to the end of the software presentation of AP automation. Thank you for bearing with me so far and for attending today. We're now going to open the floor for question and answers. And again, thank you so much for attending. In terms of next steps, you can definitely reach out to your account manager at Martin & Associates. They'd be glad to provide you with more information or to get you in contact with us directly. I'll leave my name up here as well as my email in case you had any feedback or wanted to ask me any questions directly. But for now, we'll turn it over to the chats. So if you do have any questions that are asked, please enter them now and we can go through them together.
All right, so it looks like there was a question about do you need to be on the Sage 100 cloud, which your subscription, payment model, or the non-cloud, perpetual version to use Sage AP automation?
Great. So question being, I guess, will Sage work for different versions? In this case, it was about Sage 100. So we'll integrate with all versions of Sage 100, typically from, I think it's 2016 onwards. So the past 4 years, we'll be able to make that work. And then in terms of cloud or non-cloud, that part is, I guess, is not as important. Sage here, Sage API automation gets added on to your existing Sage bill. So I believe it does need to be in a subscription format for that to work, but typically that can be adjusted quite easily. So the main thing is as long as your Sage version is 2016 or later, we'll be able to work with you.
Okay. All right, good. There was a quick question about specifically vendors. You know, a lot of your demo showed searching and working with vendor names, but you know, vendor numbers are part of the actual data tables, you know, in the system. Can you reference the vendor numbers when you're using Beanworks? Or?
Gotcha. So great question. And I'll give you a bit of a background about how that works in terms of vendors. Is what Sage API Automation and Beanworks does is we'll sync the vendors in directly from your Sage. So that means whatever you have set up within Sage 100 or Sage 500, we'll pull in those vendors. So if you had a name and a vendor number together, we'll pull that in both of them. So you can search by that vendor number or by vendor name if you have them both. So whatever is set up within Sage, we'll be able to reference. We don't maintain a separate vendor database just to make sure your
Right.
data is clean. So that also brings us to another question, was if you do need to add a brand new vendor, that can be done within Sage, and that will sync directly into API automation.
Great. There is a question here: can payments be approved through the mobile app interface?
That's a great question. So at this point, the mobile app is just for the invoice module. It is currently in development for the other modules. I was actually walking past one of our developers a couple weeks ago and saw kind of those little sneak previews. So it is on the way. But currently, it's just for the invoice module. But that's not to say that it can't be used in, or the website itself can't be used on mobile. It's just web-based, so it's not optimized for mobile, but it can be used on a tablet or a phone as well.
Gotcha. Question about, so if you're not using Sage API automation to do your payment processing, can you still see if an invoice has been paid, you know, from the Sage API automation, you know, portal?
Yep, so that is a great question. I'll jump us back into the software here to show you what that looks like. So again, if the question is if you're not using us or you're not using Sage API automation for payment, will you be able to see if it's been paid, or is that just left outstanding? So we'll jump into the invoice archive tab here. So again, this is those invoices that we've already pushed back into Sage. And we'll be able to see here on the right-hand side, sorry if it's a little bit small, some of these have a green $sign next to them. So if I click on that, I can see here that there's been a payment that's been completed and applied with a reference number. In this case here, it says payment, so it's been imported. So it's been imported directly from the accounting software. So yes, that means if you are making that payment directly from Sage, it will reflect in Sage API automation so that you can see what's been paid and what hasn't, even if you're not using our payments module for payment.
All right. That's the only thing that I see in the chat here. So.
All right, so I encourage, if you do have any other
Oh,
questions, please
there is
let us know now.
there is
Or
one. I had one more just came
okay.
in. Is there a break/even number of APA from number of invoices per month?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Is there any more?
Yeah, I guess,
Maybe that
okay.
person can clarify a little bit more.
Is there a break-even number of invoices for pricing? So I guess what's the
Okay, I
sweet
got you.
spot, yeah, like number of invoices wise?
So that is a great question. Generally, we see our clients of all different sizes using API automation. Typically, the clients that see the most benefit are processing in the number of hundreds of invoices per month and up. In terms of our pricing, our minimum pricing tiers start at 100 invoices. So it may not be the best fit if you're processing 10 to 20 invoices a month, but if you're at 100 or kind of approaching 100 invoices per month, we do have a lot of clients in that range that use us and do see a great amount of value for us. But even higher than that for larger clients in the high hundreds or thousands of invoices per month, the benefits of automating even goes up from there.
All right.
All right, and I think, yeah, I think one more question come in here on my end here. It was regarding support. So I guess, is support included? Do I have to pay extra for support? So the way support works is it is actually included as part of all of our plans. So we have a support team in-house here, not outsourced or anything like that. They're available to reach by phone, by email, or by chat. So what that means is we actually have a chat directly in the software here. So you can just click Get Help, start a new conversation with the support team and chat with them directly. So they're available Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So they're available directly by phone, email, or chat, and they're really great to work with. Hear a lot of good things from them, so that's going to be included as part of all of our plans.
All right. Great.
All right. Well, that's all I had on my end.
Great. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Joey, for the presentation. Good job. And thanks for everybody's attention. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out follow-up emails with a link to the recording if you want to recap anything, and certainly go ahead and reach out to your contact and account manager here at Martin Associates, and we'll answer any questions that you have. So thanks again for your time, and stay healthy and safe out there, and hope to talk to you again. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.